You can also find us on audio platforms. This is an epic tale that has been told and retold for thousands of years. A king is dying, and he calls for his 3 sons to come to his bedside, so that he can give them one last piece of advice before passing away. The oldest son comes in, and the king tells him to look after his younger brothers and not to let anything bad happen to them. The second son comes in, and the king tells him the same thing. And when the youngest son enters the room, the king says, "My son, my advice for you is this: never trust your brothers." So the youngest son is understandably confused. He asks his father why he's giving him this advice, but the king just tells him that he'll understand one day. And with that, the king passes away. Now obviously this doesn't make any sense. Why would the king tell his sons to not trust each other? It's much more likely that he'd tell them to get along, or maybe just stay out of each other's hair. But whatever the case, it's too late now. Their father has passed away, and all 3 brothers leave the room, each contemplating their father's final words. Not long after, the youngest brother, who's only 18 years old, leaves the kingdom to go see the world. And at first, everything is going well. He travels around, has some fun, but after a few months, he starts to get homesick. He misses his family, friends, and kingdom, so he decides to head back home. When he gets back though, his brothers have changed. They're now running the kingdom together, and they're no longer welcoming towards their youngest brother. In fact, they make him feel very unwelcome, and he soon realizes that they've teamed up to turn the entire kingdom against him. Now, he was only gone for a few months, and during that time, his brothers had turned everyone in the kingdom against him. This didn't make any sense whatsoever. And as you can imagine, the young man was pretty upset about all this. He decided to take his father's final words to heart and never trust his brothers again. So he started planning his revenge. He knew he couldn't take on both of his brothers at the same time, so he needed a clever plan to defeat them one by one. First, he went to the oldest brother and told him that he wanted to team up and rule the kingdom together. Of course, the oldest brother agreed, and the 2 became close allies. Together, they ruled over the kingdom for several years, but the young man was still plotting his revenge. Then he approached the middle brother and told him that he actually wanted to team up with him instead. Again, the second oldest brother agreed, and the 2 became close allies. Once again, they ruled over the kingdom together for several years, but the young man was still plotting his revenge. Eventually, the young man managed to get both of his brothers on his side, one after another, and he ruled the kingdom as if it were his own. Now, for a while everything seemed to be going well, but secretly the young man was preparing to betray both of his brothers. He wrote a letter to the oldest brother telling him that he actually was unloyal to him after all, and that he was going to kill him as soon as possible. He also wrote a letter to the second oldest brother saying the exact same thing. Then he posted both of the letters and waited for his brothers to read them. Of course, both brothers were furious when they received the letters, but they didn't know who to believe. They didn't want to believe that either of their brothers would betray them, but the letters did say that one of them was a traitor. So they had no choice but to team up and fight to the death. They fought hard, but in the end, the second oldest brother was killed, and now the young man was once again the sole ruler of the kingdom. But this victory came at a price. His older brother was now dead, and he felt terrible about it. That's when he realized that his father's final words were actually a warning to him, not his brothers. The whole time, the king was trying to warn his youngest son, but he just didn't listen. The young man then took his father's crown and placed it on his head, cementing his role as the new king. Now, despite the tragedy of the situation, the king was still happy with how things turned out. His kingdom was still intact, there was still a ruler, and most importantly, his youngest son learned a valuable lesson about loyalty and trust. If you liked this story, here's a quote from it that you can use as a life lesson. If your brother wrongs you, do not keep it in your heart. For as water hollows out a stone, so he will wear away your heart. Make sure to share this story with others, and always remember, even in the darkest of times, hope is never lost. And if you're still listening to this, there's an 8-year-old boy who was reading these stories with his mother. One day the boy asked his mother to stop reading and then said, "Mummy, I need you to write down what you've read so far." The mum thought this was pretty strange, but she agreed. So she pulled out a notebook and wrote down every single story they'd read that day. Then the boy said, "Okay, now go to the window and stand on the chair and yell as loud as you can." The mother was, of course, very confused, but she went to the window and started yelling. The boy then asked her to write down exactly what she yelled. After she came back, she wrote down everything she had yelled. Then the boy said, "Now go outside and yell as loud as you can." Again, the mother was very confused, but she did as she was told. She went outside and yelled, When she came back inside, she noticed that her son was smiling. Then he said, "Thank you for helping me practice my English.